This is your news source evening bulletin for today, Thursday, the 30th day of July in the year 2020. I'm Gordon Mosley. Here's what we're tracking tonight. By a unanimous decision, all three judges of the appeal court this afternoon dismissed the appeal filed by private citizen Masenga Jones. The Georgetown resident wanted the court to reverse a high court ruling that paved the way for the vote recount to be used for the compilation of the GCOM final report on the elections. Justices Dawn Gregory, Rishi Prasad, and Priya Bihari threw out the application, while pointing out that the ruling by the High Court was sound. Justice Priya Bihari described the appeal as vexatious and frivolous. She agreed with the High Court ruling that the Chief Election Officer is subjected to the directions of the Elections Commission and cannot take it upon himself to prepare a report using declarations that were overtaken by the vote recount.
The question as to whether GCOM properly set aside the March 13 declarations and ordered the recount under Order 60 is a question for the Election Court, as noted in paragraph 85 of the majority judgment in Ulita Moore. The finding by the learned Chief Justice that the March 13 declarations were overtaken by a credible count pursuant to Order 60 cannot be faulted. The law is pellucid. The court is stopped from inquiring into any matter which has the effect of vitiating an election, or using the words of Section 140, inquiring into whether GCOM or its members has validly performed its functions or at all, except under the exclusive jurisdiction of the High Court under Article 163(1)(b) of the Constitution. This appeal and the four defendants' cross appeal is frivolous and vexatious and amounts to a further abuse of the court's process.
Justice Rishi Prasad shared similar views as he also dismissed the appeal. He said the Chief Election Officer must follow the directions of the Commission and comply with its request for the vote recount to be used to compile the final report. Justice Prasad said it would be absurd for the Chief Election Officer to offer a report outside of the recount that he himself supervised.
Unconstitutionality, to my mind, is an inherent consideration of the legal and constitutional scheme for elections in Guyana, as referred to by the CCJ. Reliance on the validity of Order 60 in David's case and its rejection as unconstitutional here, as an afterthought seemingly, is a classic case of an abuse of the court's process, which must be rejected. The CCJ, throughout its decision, anatomized Order 60, excruciatingly explaining its purport, intent, and transparent processes, and emphatically endorsed it as part of the existing legislative scheme governing the March 2nd, 2020 elections in Guyana.
And President of the Court, Justice Dawn Gregory, in her judgment said there should be no difficulty in the Chief Election Officer utilizing the vote recount to complete his final report. She brushed aside arguments and the contention that there would have been a need for the returning officers to be involved in the recount process, reminding the court that the recount took place in one place and under the supervision of the same Elections Commission that ordered it.
But to my mind, the reference on the Article 177 to be that his report, that the Commission is to act only on his advice as presented in his report, is based on that administrative system that is set out, as I've explained it, as I've examined it, the pyramid type of system. So from that, the CEO would calculate the number of votes cast for each list, and from that present his report. So we come now to the recount. As I've said, it was within GCOM's powers to decide that they wish to use the results of the recount and to so instruct the CEO. The stipulations in Order 60 explain that the CEO was the functionary who was in charge of the recount process, and that process was undertaken at one location and not at disparate locations across the country. This was housed in one location, that process. And so to my mind, those arrangements would enable the Chief Elections Officer to prepare a report for of the final results based on the tabulations during the recount.
Today's decision by the Court of Appeal effectively puts the matter back in the hands of the Elections Commission to move ahead with its work and to make a final declaration of the election results using the recount numbers. The attorney for the appellant requested and got a 24-hour stay in the decision to study it. It is unclear whether the attorneys intend to take the matter to the Caribbean Court of Justice, which had pronounced on several aspects related to the same elections in a recent judgment. More news coming up in just a moment.
The following is an important message from the Ministry of Public Health. You can prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus. If you have the following symptoms: coughing, fever, or difficulty breathing, please stay home. If you don't have these symptoms, then practice social distancing. Avoid crowds. When in a group, keep a distance of at least 3 feet between yourself and other persons. Please wash your hands with soap regularly or use hand sanitizers. The Ministry of Public Health has a hotline to provide information on the coronavirus. Members of the public can call 227-4986 or 624-3067.
Tired of long lines? Register with MyGTT at mygtt.co.gy. That's mygtt.co.gy to view and pay your bills from anywhere. Enter to win an Amazon gift card worth $25 or a bounty voucher worth 5,000 Guyana dollars when you sign up today. GTT, do more.
GBTI is your Guyanese bank, a bank that understands every customer's unique needs, opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. At GBTI, we see you for you. Whether you're buying a new home or car, planning your next vacation or retirement, saving for your child's future, or whether you're ready to take that bold step of investing in your dream business idea, we are with you every step of the way. We hear your stories and watch you focus on your dreams as we share your aspirations. We are more than just banking. We are a family. We are part of your community. Our commitment extends way beyond the walls of our branches and is demonstrated every day in the opportunities we provide to our individual and business customers. The support, time, and commitment we give back to communities across Guyana to help improve the lives of our Guyanese families. Because we see Guyana through your eyes.
Hello, boys and girls. As you prepare to write your exams, there are a few things you will have to do each day so that you and those around you can be safe and healthy. Please remember, on the day of your exam, you must wear a mask correctly, covering your mouth and nose before entering the school compound. Wash your hands with soap and water at the entrance of the school at the sink provided for 20 seconds. Paying attention to the palm and back of your hands, between your fingers and their tips. Dry your hands with a clean tissue and dispose in the closed bin nearby. Boys and girls, your temperature will be tested by an official. Then you will go to the designated waiting area with the floor signs and markings clearly visible, standing or sitting 2 meters or 6 feet apart at all times. It is now time to start your exam. The invigilator will direct you to the examination room. All the best. Boys and girls, playing and gathering are not allowed. Parents, the Ministry of Education thanks you for the support you have given the children during the time at home. However, in the interest of everyone's well-being, you will not be allowed to enter the school compound. Parents and guardians, we are counting on your support in picking up the children promptly after their exam. Remember, the Ministry of Education will provide transport for children who are living far away that require that assistance. Please be reminded that vending outside the school's compound is prohibited. Only authorized canteen vendors with a copy of their food handler certificate and wearing a mask, food gloves, apron, hairnet, and a hat will be allowed. Always remember to wear your mask correctly, wash your hands, and stay safe. And let's win the fight against COVID-19. A message from the Ministry of Education.
Welcome back. APNU-AFC Executive Joe Harmon has expressed the coalition's disappointment with the Court of Appeal's decision to dismiss an appeal by private citizen Masenga Jones, which upholds the Chief Justice's ruling that the votes from the recount should be used to compile the final report of the Chief Election Officer. Mr. Harmon said while he did not expect much of the Court of Appeal as constituted, he is still disappointed that the court did not use this opportunity at this juncture in the history of Guyana to make a judgment which was sound in law. He noted that a decision should result in citizens examining in a more meticulous way the manner in which their justice system works. According to Harmon, the APNU-AFC coalition is committed to the rule of law and respect for decisions of the court. He said the coalition maintains that when the matter goes to the Elections Commission, only valid votes will be counted in the final declaration made by the chairman of GCOM. He added that fraudulent votes cannot be the basis for a final declaration to be made, and that is the firm position of the coalition. The APNU-AFC, which raised a number of concerns after several anomalies were discovered during the vote recount, has been maintaining that the votes affected by those anomalies ought not to be included in the recount. However, the GCOM chairperson's position is that the Elections Commission has no legal authority to invalidate votes, and therefore such matters would have to be raised in an election petition case. The Chief Justice and the judges in the appeal court have all agreed with the GCOM chairperson's position. On the other side, opposition leader and PPP General Secretary Bara Jagdeo this afternoon welcomed the decision of the Court of Appeal. In his statement, Mr. Jagdeo urged the Elections Commission and the chairperson of the commission to move on now and declare the results.
I would urge Justice Claudette Singh, as our lawyer pointed out, the elections, when are we going to declare? The lawyer said 2025. Justice Singh is under no obligation to respect any stay when nobody is clear what this stay is about.
Mr. Jagdeo said he was not surprised with the court's description of the matters as frivolous. He said it is clear that based on the recount, the PPP won the elections and it is time for the country to move forward.
So unless the Court of Appeal, we are pleased that the decision was unanimous in this regard, and it justifies all that the people who are fighting for democracy have been saying, that Lowenfield is acting fraudulently, illegally, for part of the rigging cabal, and that he has no authority to act in that manner, and that it's the commission that makes the decision.
The PPP General Secretary said the High Court and the Court of Appeal have been very clear in their position on the vote recount being used, and he is not sure why a stay was even granted for 24 hours on the latest decision. Based on the undeclared recount numbers, the PPP could end up with 33 seats in Parliament, with the APNU-AFC getting 31 seats and the joiner parties claiming 1 seat. The Elections Commission has not set a date for its next meeting. Let's tell you now that President David Granger today reiterated that he will abide by the final declaration that is made by the chairman of the Elections Commission. Speaking to reporters this morning, the president said he has not budged from that position and his insistence on credibility.
What I have insisted on is credibility. Other people have been making calls. I know what I've said. I've said that I'm interested in having, as early as possible, a declaration by the chairman of the commission. And I don't run the elections. The chairman of the commission and 6 commissioners will determine the outcome of this process.
And President David Granger also reminded that it is the GCOM chairperson and the commissioners who run the elections and not him, and it is their job to determine the outcome of the process. On the issue of the calls for him to concede, the president said there can be no concession in the absence of a declaration. He said he has always been following the Constitution and the rulings of the court.
I cannot concede because no declaration has been made. I pay attention to what the popular media say, but as far as the groundswell is concerned, everybody knows that for the last 20 months I've been saying over and over again that I will abide by the declaration by the Election Commission. I will abide by the rulings of the court. People can rightfully challenge the ruling if they disagree with it, but once the court has finally ruled, we will obey the ruling of the court. So the groundswell is not a legitimate statement of what the law or the Constitution calls for. I follow the Constitution, I follow what the courts have said, and I await the decision of the Commission. I cannot follow the groundswell.
The 2nd of August will make 5 months since the elections took place in Guyana and no final result declared. It is the longest that a country has ever went without a final declaration of election results. Let's tell you now that Guyana's first infectious diseases hospital was commissioned this morning at Lilienthal, where the Ocean View Hotel once stood. The new hospital, which work started on a few months ago, will serve as the premier health institution for quarantining and isolation of persons who have been infected by the coronavirus and other infectious diseases. At the commissioning this morning, President David Granger noted that coronavirus has brought about a new reality that health institutions need to be much more prepared for infectious diseases.
These efforts are supported by a communications campaign to keep the population updated and informed on the virus and its impacts, and oversight provided by the Health Emergency Operations Center. The National Emergency Operations Center was activated to provide support to the public health sector.
The president also said the establishment of the Infectious Diseases Hospital represents an essential and urgent investment in safeguarding people's health, not just against the coronavirus pandemic, but also against future communicable epidemics.
Attention in recent years has been focused on reducing the incidence and improving treatment for communicable diseases. As Dr. Adekro pointed out, the public health system is being made more resilient and responsive to the threats posed by communicable disease.
The new hospital will ease the burden placed on other public hospitals across the country. It will be able to isolate and treat more than 190 patients at any one time. Public Health Minister Walter Lawrence. The Public Health Minister said the facility should be able to remove the constraints from the Georgetown Public Hospital and the district and regional hospitals that do not have the capacities and capabilities to address infectious diseases. Dr. William Adekro of the Pan American Health Organization said he is confident that a new facility will improve the quality of infrastructure and services to patients and staff as the world continues to battle COVID-19. The Ministry of Public Health today announced updated national COVID-19 measures as the country moves into Phase 4 of its gradual reopening. Most of the previous measures remain in place, including the 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. But now religious organizations and places of worship will be allowed to restart their operations, but with guidelines in place. Under the updated gazetted order, which takes effect from Saturday, while places of worship will be allowed to resume their services, they will not be allowed to have more than 25% of the capacity of the building. Additionally, face masks must be worn at all times by those attending the services, and sanitation blocks must be in place for the washing of hands. In cases where there are multiple services, the entire building must be cleaned and sanitized between services, which must be 45 minutes apart. Additionally, elderly persons are to be encouraged to attend separate services that cater for them only. The guidelines also call for only families from the same home to be seated together and for everyone else to obey the rules of physical distancing. Ceremonial foods like those used for communions should come prepackaged, and worshippers are being encouraged to walk with their own prayer fabric and fabric to place on the ground when kneeling. For those religions that may require worshippers to enter the place of worship without shoes, the shoes should be placed in bags and separated from others. Places of worship are also being encouraged to have special rooms to accommodate persons who might fall ill during services. The easing of the restriction on gatherings at places of worship comes even as the number of coronavirus cases in the country continue to climb. The Assistant U.S. Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere Matters, Michael Kozak, today announced that the U.S. government was moving to impose additional visa sanctions on senior officials in Guyana over the election situation and what the U.S. considers the undermining of democracy. During a media briefing for members of the foreign press, Mr. Kozak said that the U.S. government is acting to prevent additional senior individuals from Guyana from entering the U.S. He said the U.S. Secretary of State has been clear that the Granger administration Aviation and its allies continue to defy the will of the Guyanese people. He said they are doing so by refusing to accept the vote recount. The U.S. Assistant Secretary of State also said the recount has been certified as valid by the international observers, and the U.S. joins the rest of the region in refusing to go along with what he called a farce. Guyana is still to get a final declaration of the elections. Although visa restrictions were announced earlier this month, it remains unclear who have been affected by those visa restrictions. Under U.S. regulations, when a visa is revoked, the person targeted will have to be contacted and informed of that decision. Meanwhile, during today's meeting, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State was asked about comments made by the U.S. President about delaying the U.S. elections and what message that sends to a country like Guyana. To that, Kozak said he would not comment on President Trump's statements on domestic matters. With Guyana recording 3 new cases of coronavirus in the past 24 hours, the Chief Medical Officer is pleading with citizens to take all necessary precautions to safeguard themselves against the deadly virus as the country heads into a long holiday weekend. 2 of the new cases are from Region 7, which has more than 70 active cases, while the other cases from right here in the city. Dr. Shamdio Prasad today said men who continue to be the most affected need to put away the macho attitude and protect themselves more.
I'm convinced that together we can flatten the curve with more effort from all of us. In the city, we need to make a behavioral change and respect the health guidelines. In our hotspot regions 7 and 9, which remain high-risk areas, you need to curtail your cross-border movement, where exposure to the disease is uncontrollably high, and help to halt the import of cases. In our mining communities, the influx of migrants continue to contribute to high incidence of positive cases through their constant movement in and out of the communities. As we're about to celebrate over this long weekend, please remember that your health and safety are at risk. Men, just forget your macho attitude. Put on a mask and avoid rubbing shoulders. 6 feet apart is a safe distance, and the curfew is still in effect.
And as the Muslim community celebrates Eid on Friday, the Chief Medical Officer also stated that those observing the celebrations need to be mindful of the health rules that are in place.
Tomorrow, July the 31st, is a national holiday where our Guyanese Muslim brothers and sisters will be celebrating with the Muslim community around the world the festival of Eid al-Adha. The WHO has cautioned countries globally about the safety measures that need to be adopted to prevent the further transmission of the raging coronavirus disease. On a national level, I also wish to state that our Muslim counterparts must be cognizant of the local COVID-19 situation and make the necessary adjustments so that exposure to the virus is nullified. This means that the practice of social distancing must be prioritized and strictly adhered to. No more than 10 persons congregating with visible 6 feet demarcation, and more importantly, alternative arrangements must be in place regarding the distribution of meat to the needy.
He also said those celebrating emancipation on Saturday should also pay attention to the guidelines and continue to be safe. There are now 196 active cases of coronavirus in Guyana. Across the region is coming up next.
We give thanks for real. You spend all that money on your watch. How much time you spend with your son? So much money in the club. How much you spend with the ones you love? The simple things are your blessings.
Cheese, please. Remember Tyrus Riley, this one we aim to please. The music will never ease. Cheese, please.
Are you washing your hands correctly? Here are some tips on when and how to wash your hands. Step 1. Wet your hands with clean water. Step 2. Then apply soap. Step 3. For 10 to 15 seconds, lather your palms together. Always remember to pay attention to your fingers, especially your nails and tips. And don't forget the back and between your fingers. Step 4. Rinse hands with clean water for about 20 seconds. Step 5. Dry hands with a clean paper towel or tissue.
But when should you wash your hands? After using the toilet, before and after eating, preparing or handling uncooked food, after playing with pets or caring for animals, after sneezing and coughing or blowing your nose, before and after changing babies or caring for others.
Frequent hand washing or using a hand sanitizer with alcohol as an alternative will remove viruses and bacteria from your hands.
A message from the Ministry of Public Health in collaboration with PAHO WHO.
They've made a positive impact on the heavy-duty transportation industry in Guyana since they've arrived. Guyanese are amazed at their power, durability, efficiency, and superior handling capabilities. These are brand new trucks, manufactured in partnership with German, Italian, and French companies. They have a powerful reputation for operating under very adverse Guyanese conditions and come with full after-sales service and spare parts. They're the most sought-after trucks today, with over 500 units in Guyana, and they're available in over 100 countries, including South America and the Caribbean. Be smart. Buy brand new ST Howo trucks today. Call 608-4998 and arrange for an inspection at ST Truck Guyana Incorporated, Block B, Public Road, Covenant, East Bank, Demerara.
We are legions of men standing strong, but never too proud to stoop and help someone. We must send a clear signal to all. Do right. Walk in upright ways. Knowing that's what being a man is all about. And ever aware that things will only get worse when good men do nothing. Stand strong. Be the one to live right.
Across the region right now, the Caribbean aviation industry has lost more than $5 billion due to the coronavirus pandemic. That's according to a report out of the International Air Transport Association. Speaking yesterday at the panel discussion on COVID-19 and the future of borders, which was the 6th session of the CARICOM Impacts Virtual Security Conference, a manager at the Air Transport Association, Alejandro Restrepo, reported that the Caribbean, which is the most tourism-dependent region, lost $5.3 billion in revenue, $740 million in GDP, and 23,000 jobs in the aviation industry. He said the challenge COVID-19 poses is totally unprecedented and critical. He also noted that globally, before COVID-19, every day 12.4 million passengers traveled, and there were 106,600 flights. But with COVID-19, this was cut in half to about 6.1 million passengers and 63,000 flights. The loss in profits is $4 billion. Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, is denying discrimination in the enforcement of coronavirus prevention measures. He made the remarks today while presenting a resolution to the House of Assembly for the extension of the state of emergency for another 3 months to October 31. The Antiguan Prime Minister said, however, that returning nationals are more capable of spreading the virus, and that is why the cabinet decided that the returning nationals who are going into communities should also take an additional COVID-19 test on arrival. Prime Minister Brown said some people have interpreted that as discriminatory, but he said it is not discriminatory in any way. Brown told the lower house that visitors to the country must also follow all of the health protocols. And finally tonight, international news. The BBC reports that US President Donald Trump has suggested that November's presidential election be postponed, saying increased postal voting could lead to fraud and inaccurate results. He floated a delay until people could properly, securely, and safely vote. There is little evidence to support Mr. Trump's claims, but he has long rallied against mail-in voting, which he has said would be susceptible to fraud. U.S. states want to make postal voting easier due to public health concerns over the coronavirus pandemic. The BBC says under the U.S. Constitution, Mr. Trump does not have the authority to postpone the election himself. Any delay would have to be approved by Congress. The U.S. president does not have any direct direct power over the two houses of Congress. And that's your News Source Evening Bulletin for tonight. I'm Gordon Mosley, reporting.